Well, hey, everybody. It's Romania Black. And I need to let that coffee cool down. But we are on volume 4 of Scum Villain. And I am matching today. And I've taken like a week and a half off since recording chapters 89 and 90. We're not going to talk about 89 and 90. We're not going to talk about them. I went back and listened to the discussion. I didn't watch the reaction again. I can't. I will sob my eyes out. But I went back and rewatched the discussion. I don't feel any differently. Feel pretty much the same with that. There's some comments I want to talk about. I have not gotten to the YouTube comments for chapters 80 and 81 yet. Only the Patreon ones, and then the comments from YouTube from chapters 78 and 79 to let you know where I'm at in all of this. So I want to kind of address some of those comments because I thought some of them were really, really good. And some of them I have been, one thing that I really enjoy from the comment section these last couple of weeks is that everyone has been very respectful, which thank you, because I am not going to lie to you all. I don't know how things are going to go with chapters 89 and 90. I'm not looking forward to that. And I've been trying to give Discord a heads up on that because I'm like, oh, buddy. But I feel like everybody, at least for chapters 78 through 81, have been overall really respectful. Even the people that disagree. And I understand where you're coming from. I get it. I just don't agree with it. So it's fine. That's just welcome to a world where we can all disagree and it's okay at the end of the day. But I have really appreciated how respectful everyone has been. The moderators haven't told me not to read anyone's comments, so I guess that means everybody's being respectful. So that's really cool. So hopefully that's the case with chapters 89, 90, because I feel really bad about those chapters. I don't like being emotional like that. Like, I like being excited emotional and, happy tears emotional, but being enraged or frustrated is not an emotion that one usually wants themselves to express. And so it's kind of just weird to be in that headspace. But I've taken some time off to kind of like clear my head and be like, okay, you know what? Today's a new week. I'm hoping that if we do get more of these two idiots, they make some progress, do some growing, communicating, basic things for relationships. I'm not asking for much. But I also know that the moderators, without telling me what the extra chapters will focus on, have told me that there are other characters that the chapters focus on. I'm hoping we get like a Liu Qingge centered extra. That'd be great. And I really want some Shang Qinghua. I've ever since Shang Qinghua went and rescued Mo Bei-jun at the end of volume 3, I was like, oh, there's something there. And MXTX has conveniently stopped talking about them. So I would love for there to be more Mo Bei-jun and more Shang Qinghua. I would love that. And maybe somewhere in the remaining pages, it's hard to gauge because I have to keep going back and forth now because 7C has mixed everything up. So I don't know exactly how much. After this week, we will be at the halfway point after this week, which is crazy. That means we still have half of volume 4. So there's still a lot left to go. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some Mo Bei-jun and Shang Qinghua, but we'll just have to wait and see. That's still too hot. So let's dive into these comments, shall we? Before we get started with this week's chapter set. Holy Milk, 1867. Noted about Jiansu, which is Yu Qingyan's sword, being a phallic symbol. I've seen someone suggest that a modern AU equivalent to Yu Qingyan's sword problem would be him having a huge dick, but also erectile dysfunction. So basically the plot of Twittering Birds. Only not quite. But wait, hold on. He would naturally struggle to talk openly about that. 2, leading to OG Shinching-cho to believe that the reason Chige won't get together with him is because he doesn't love or doesn't want him. Holy Milk, I don't know if you've read Twittering Birds Never Fly, but you really need to. If you haven't, because, that plot point is talked about in that BL, and I really enjoy it. So yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it, and I'm not opposed to it. Lily Kep says, Lo Binghe is such a child, which makes sense to me. There is a theory that your emotional development can be stunted by trauma. That means Lo Binghe is emotionally frozen at the age he was when he was thrown into the abyss. I have a couple things to say about that. I'm not a psychologist. I have some psychological training involved with mediation and conflict resolution, but I'm not a trained psychologist. I have not gone through all that research, study, training, whatnot. However, I will say, I'm not saying you're wrong, Lilycap, but if Lo Binghe is emotionally frozen at the age of 15, he does not need to be in a relationship with a man in his 20s right now. He needs to, I guess my big takeaway from, and I'm probably going to say this throughout other people's comments, my big takeaway from last week was these two do not need to be in a relationship right now. They need to separate, and Lo Binghe needs to figure some things out. And needs to, and I don't have a problem with Shin Qingqiu helping him to figure those things out, but he needs to do some growing emotionally. He needs to get more emotionally mature and fix some of the problems that are toxic about the way that he treats Shin Qingqiu in their relationship. Shin Qingqiu needs to open up and communicate more, establish his boundaries, and grow a spine. Shin Qingqiu needs to do that, and he needs to set boundaries, and Lo Binghe needs to realize that he can't whine and pout his way to get out of those boundaries, because that's not what a healthy, realistic relationship does. And if he is emotionally stunted to a 15-year-old state, he does not need to be in a sexual relationship. He can be in a relationship where he romantically gets to know Shin Qingqiu more and get to love him, but they don't need to be having sex. 15-year-olds, no, stop. You're not ready, especially with people in their 20s. No. So I don't know how I feel about that comment, because if that is true, then these two need to back off and go do some improvements before they go any further in their physical relationship. And I don't think MXTX is going to do that, because she was in high school when she wrote this and didn't have the cognizant knowledge that that's what she should do. But that's just my theory. So anyway, Mona Lisa Ramos 8594 says, for me, it's this pressure that Lo Binghe puts on Shin Qingqiu of having to choose him that throws me off. And Mona Lisa, your comment, it spoke to me, so I want to read it, because I was like, yes, oh my gosh, validation. It felt so validating reading this. I know he's perfect for Shin Yan. But this type of relationship isn't the kind that pleases me, of having to choose between your social life and a passion. Shin Qingqiu has a life separate from Lo Binghe, with friends and disciples. Obviously, that's not a life that Shin Yan chose, but he accepted it. Lo Binghe doesn't have other things that he wants besides Shin Qingqiu, which I also don't like, because I wanted him to have an ambition beyond his love, since he's his own person. But since his obsession is one I can accept, I personally just don't like the idea of giving up something for someone else. Exactly. I feel like in MXTX's other works, even, Hua Chong, without spoiling anything, Hua Chong is obsessed with Xi Lian and worships him. But he's got a hobby. He's got a couple hobbies. He's got a side hustle here and there. He's got other things that he can do if he's not around Xi Lian, and does so in the novels. So, there is that, right? And so, even if they are connected to Xi Lian, there are other things he does in the story besides just follow Xi Lian around being like, can we have sex now? And it's like him all the time doing that. No, Hua Chong's not like that, which I'm like, thank God. Yes, an adult man you are. So I totally agree. And so then it says, in the end, if I have to choose, I'll choose what I already have. So I end up not liking Lo Binghe. I know how complex he is, but this complexity doesn't align with my idea of behavior towards beloved people. Snap, snap, snap. I like some toxic relationships that I've read about, but I don't like it when there's pressure to force a person to give up on who they are unless it's to improve. I love Scum villain self-saving system, but not so much Lo Binghe. And that's exactly where I am. Like, it's good to help people improve who they are, especially if they're in a toxic place, but you should not have to make people conform to just loving you and no one else. And I'm not saying Lo Binghe do anything else. They start to have that conversation in chapter 87. He asks him, do you like other things? But then he goes like, well, do you like other things? And again, Shin Qingqiu's been Pavlovian dogged into believing that if Lo Binghe starts to give puppy eyes, that means he's going to destroy the world if you tell him no. So it's just very frustrating. Awesomely Tsundere kind of follows up with that, saying, I think what bothers me the most that I've never been able to put into words before this reaction for chapters 80 and 81 is, like you pointed out about Shin Qingqiu's response to all of this, it feels very much like victim blaming, and how abuse victims think to excuse the action of their abusers. And I really hate that. I don't want to put Lo Binghe into a box completely of an abuser. And I talked about that last week, because I know Lo Binghe loves him unconditionally, but some of the things that Lo Binghe does are the things that abusers do to their victims. And they convince the victims that they're in the wrong when it's the abuser that's in the wrong. And I think Lo Binghe falls into those patterns. And if MXTX was in high school when she wrote this and didn't know the difference, it's like, it's kind of like when you write a little bit out of your element. If you don't know it from experience, then you can't really know what it is. But if you've seen it, and I've seen a bit, I've seen domestic abuse, I've seen relationship abuse, there's a lot of patterns from episodes 89 and 90 that I was like, that's what an abuser does. And even if Lo Binghe doesn't mean it, that doesn't excuse it. Like, oh, I didn't mean to stab you with this knife, but I did. And that's been what a lot of people have gotten on a Shin-Ching show. They're like, but he stabbed Lo Binghe. And I'm like, well, then we're right back to where we were. So Awesomely Tsundere, I totally get that comment as well. Amelia Jungclaws says, if it doesn't help enough, there are plenty of good fix-it fix, AU fix, and alternate pairing fix to help heal your heart. In my opinion, Scum Villain Self-Saving System has the best fan fix out of all the MXTX novels, which actually might be because of its flaws and rushed ending and such. Yeah, I'll be honest with y'all. I haven't really read any Modao Zushi fanfiction at all because Modao Zushi is pretty great. I don't need a fanfic. If I want great Modao Zushi content, I will go to Modao Zushi. I honestly think maybe I prefer Heaven Official's Blessing because I get more with Shilian and Hua-Chang, but if I'm looking in terms of which story I don't need to go to fan fiction for, it's Modao Zushi. I don't need fan fiction. I've got it right there. If I've ever looked at fan fiction for Modao Zushi, it's been for some of the side characters that I don't get interaction with from the main series, but Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji, it's right there. I don't need to go to a fan fiction to get any more. I've only looked, I'm going to reveal myself. I've only looked a few times for Heaven Official's Blessing fan fiction, and that's been because of like some post stuff that happens in the extras that I wanted more context with. And so I've looked up that, you know, just to know. Or there's been some pairings in Heaven Official's Blessing that don't get talked about enough for me, so I try to find fan fiction about those. But I don't read a lot of Shili and Hua-Chang fan fiction. It's mainly of the side characters because I want to know what people have wrote with them. But this, I haven't been able to read the fan fiction because I'm not through the story yet. But I don't know if it's a compliment to Scum Villain if people are like, oh, well, just wait till you get to the fan fiction where people fixed what MXTX did. I don't think that's a compliment. I think that fan fiction can be a compliment to an author, like showing how popular it is and how good the writing is. But in this case, it almost feels like everybody's like, yeah, we know that MXTX messed up, but we fixed it in the fan fiction. And I'm like, is that a good thing? So I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that yet. I'm going to reserve all my final judgment till the very end, but at least y'all have good fanfic. I don't know if I'm going to want to dive into that fanfic, but we'll see where we go to. There are some couples that I'm like, I kind of want to explore, but I got to finish volume 4 first. And then finally, Storm X says, to me, it feels like Lo Binghe never gets a proper resolution or development. I like that we can see where his character comes from and how trauma affects him. But I waited the entire time to see how he would improving it better, and then Volume 3 ended like it did. To me, the ending feels kind of inconclusive, not counting Volume 4. And I totally agree with that. I don't like that Xinyan has to suffer so much for Lo Binghe, and instead of getting a thank you, he has to apologize and console a crying Binghe. That is so true. I was like, I think another thing that frustrated me these last couple chapters was Shin-Ching-cho, Lo Binghe does not seem grateful to him at all. And I know what people will say. They'll be like, well, actually, you know, Shin-Ching-cho caused all this trauma to Lo Binghe. I'm like, but Xinyan didn't. It was the other one. And he can't tell Lo Binghe that it was the other one. So he's just trying to work with what he does. But I'm like, Shin-Ching-cho has bent over backwards for this man and like done all of these things at every single whim. And does Lo Binghe even give him a thank you? No. He's just like, okay. It's just annoying. And I'm so hopeful that maybe we'll take a break this week from them. I can't deal with the crying, poor Lo Binghe and his massive dick. Poor Lo Binghe. I can't do it. But Sormex says, if anything, this is why Scum Villain Self-Saving System has the best fan fiction out of the 3 series, my personal opinion. I could see why. The other series to me are perfect, and there is little to nothing you can change or add to improve it. But this one has so much potential. As you said, you can ship Shin-Ching-cho with anyone, and there's enough material that it feels justified. There are so many small things that can be changed, and you have an entire new story. No, I totally get that. Like, I think right now, as I'm halfway through Scum Villain's final volume, right now, like, unfortunately, Scum Villain, like, up until the end of volume 3, it was at the top for me. Like, it was my favorite so far. Like, the concept, the world building, all the potential. And then by the end of volume 3, it just like dive bombed. It just like airplane shooting towards the sky crashed that plane so hard into the mountain. And I was like, oh no, what a disappointment. And this volume has been very hit or miss so far. There's been some good things, but I'm like, I don't know if it's enough to salvage it compared to the other 2 stories. Like, I still like Scum Villain, don't get me wrong. I would stop reading if I didn't. If I had gave up completely, I would stop reading. But I still like Scum Villain a bit. But I don't like it as much as the other 2 because the other 2 have better romance. And I'm sorry. I feel like people that really like Scum Villain's romance don't like Heaven Official's Blessing, and people that like Heaven Official's Blessing's romance are not going to like this. And I love Heaven Official's Blessing romance. So I'm sorry. Sorry about you. But that's just how it is. And you can disagree. No harm, no foul. But yeah, this story, concept-wise, this is my favorite of the 3 because of all the potential it has, and it has such a cool premise. But I feel like MXTX really drops the ball in what she could have done with this. I feel like she just gave up and was like, I don't know where to go with this story, so here you go. And it was not satisfying. But maybe volume 4, the rest of it, we still got, 6 more weeks to go. Maybe it will be good. But I've talked for nearly 20 minutes, and I don't want to complain about this story. I'm just so pissed off at it because I'm like, I had such high expectations, and since the end of volume 3, it hasn't bounced back enough for me. But maybe that's just the first half. Maybe the second half will pick up and I'll get to liking it. We'll just have to see. I'm motivating myself. But I swear to you all, if this week's chapter set is Lo Bing-hye being whiny and bratty and making Shin Ching-cho feel sorry about himself, I will cut this short and be like, there will be no discussion. I'll be like, bitch, no. So hopefully maybe we'll go and explore these other characters. Maybe we'll get Liu Mingfan and Xiao Waling. Maybe we'll get something with them. Maybe we'll get Shang Qingwan Mobeijun. Maybe we'll get Yu Qingyang and Liu Qingge. Maybe we'll get some chapters on them. That would be great. I would love that. Maybe we'll get, did TianLang-Jun die, or is he off somewhere else with, Wu Qin or whatever? Maybe we'll get stuff with them. That would be amazing. I would be all for that. I need a break from these bakas because they're driving me up a wall. So let's see what happens. So we're going to start Heaven Officials. I wish we were starting Heaven Official's Blessing at this point. We're going to start Scum Villain's Self-Saving System, Part 32, chapters 91 to 92. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Part 25, Bamboo Branch Poem. Well, the bamboo branches would be back at the bamboo house, right? Possible? Chapter 91. Oh, Zhuzhi-Lang! Oh! Okay. All right. I'm not going to lie to you all. The moderators had said, because when we were going through, I was like, oh, I've read these chapters. And one of the moderators was like, oh, the one with Zhuzhi-Lang. And I was like, and they were like, oh, never mind. Ignore me. Bring it. So I wondered if there was a chapter that was involving Zhuzhi-Lang. So here we go. Okay. Yay. Well, this is in the past, so it has to be better than where we are now. So, okay. Zhuzhi-Lang had known for a long, long time that it was a disgusting monster. Oh no! Why are we instantly having Zhuzhi-Lang feel sad about himself? No, stop. Even on the southern border, where monsters flourished, it was considered a monster among monsters. Why are you calling yourself an it? Sir, are you non-binary? You should be they, them. Back then, it hadn't been called Zhuzhi-Lang, for it had possessed no name. Oh. Generally speaking, upon sighting a half-man, half-snake thing slithering on about the ground, no one would be bored enough to think of giving it a name. Even if they were bored enough, the southern border demons preferred to give it a couple of kicks, stab its tail, or study this weird little thing for a weak spot to see if you could beat it to death. MXTX, what are you doing? Why are you being so mean? Sheng Qinghua, why are you being such a bastard of an author? Its daily schedule is very simple. Slither, look for water. Slither, look for food. Slither, bite and scrimmage with other beast-shaped demons. Though it lacked an impressive appearance, when it came to fighting, it wasn't at too much of a disadvantage. On the contrary, not only was its body flexible and agile, its disgusting appearance often disturbed and distracted its opponent during battle. Therefore, this weird little thing, both ugly and a pain, was extremely unpopular on the southern border. What is with this family and being just the most tragic? Airplane, what? Upon seeing it for the first time, even an educated noble like TianLang-Jun stared it up and down for a while before he said with all sincerity, "It's so ugly." As was to be expected, the black armored general standing apathetically behind him said nothing. "Far too ugly," TianLang-Jun repeated. It was uncertain who he was complaining to. There was much too emphasis in that sentence. The weird little thing shrank away. Then again it felt, somehow this esteemed noble's criticism held no true disgust. It had seen gazes rife with disgust many, many times, and they hadn't been like this. TianLang-Jun gracefully shifted into a half-crouch, staring at it. "Do you remember your mother?" It shook its head. "Oh," said TianLang-Jun, "that's good too. If I had that kind of mother, I too would prefer not to remember her." It didn't know what to say. Of course, even if it had known, it wouldn't have been able to say it. All it could do was release a raspy hiss. TianLang-Jun gave it a smile. "However, there are some things you should be told. Your mother is dead. I'm her older brother. To fulfill her dying wish, I've come to see you." Oh. Demons were cold-blooded. When it came to the death of a blood relative, any one of them could speak of the event cavalierly, glossing over it with a single line. The weird thing didn't feel anything in particular. It only stiffly nodded out of habit. TianLang-Jun seemed to find this dull. "Well, all right," he said dryly. "I've seen to her last request. All of these are your subordinates. From here on out, this plot of land will be yours." Just gave a plot of land. I was like, all right, did my business. The subordinates he referred to were those hundreds of black armored generals. Although these things had no mind and couldn't think, they feared neither pain nor death and would never stop nor feel fatigue. They formed an invincible, all-conquering army, and TianLang-Jun had indeed handed them off to a half-man, half-snake monster on a whim. Which shows, one, that he's not a great general, and two, also shows kind of airplane shooting towards the skies writing techniques of just like, yeah, a massive army. They don't have identities. Whatever. TianLang-Jun stood up and patted the non-existent dust from his hymn. Then he turned and left. It was an unexpected development. The weird little thing wavered in place before wriggling its way after him. TianLang-Jun looked back bewildered. "What are you following me for?" The snake man dared not move. At the sight of this, TianLang-Jun took another step forward, and it once again began to slither behind him, squirming. TianLang-Jun stopped in place and asked in confusion, "Can you not understand me?" This scene repeated once, twice, then 3 times. In the end, TianLang-Jun simply ignored the thing. Going on his way with his hands clasped behind his back, the snake man clumsily tagged along after him. TianLang-Jun's was a special existence. His blood was noble and his status extraordinary, so naturally he had no shortage of enemies. As the snake man followed, countless rabble came to make trouble for him. Despite TianLang-Jun clearly having no need for outside help, the snake man always stepped up to fight with all its might, offering its meager martial ability. This happened numerous times, until TianLang-Jun finally couldn't ignore the thing's existence. He sent the battered and bruised snake man 2 glances and delivered his assessment. Still so ugly. Wounded, the snake man shrank back. TianLang-Jun smiled again. And also stubborn. That's not very personable. Even after following him all that time, the snake man had never once flinched back from the many difficulties and obstacles. But when met with this unkind evaluation, it was filled with the impulse to turn and run no slither away. It would never have guessed that in the next moment, TianLang-Jun would place a bare hand on his head and sigh. both ugly and stubborn. I can't stand to watch this any longer. A strange and gentle flow, both warm and cold, coursed through all its limbs and bones. But how could it have limbs? The snake man realized very quickly that, without its knowledge, 4 perfectly whole limbs had sprouted from its once deformed torso. On top of that, 10 fingers, things he had found exquisite yet unattainable, had appeared upon his new palms. It was the body of a youth. The body's age was around 15 to 16, its complexion fair and figure slender, healthy and whole. TianLang-Jun moved his hand away, his pitch-black irises reflecting a white silhouette. While holding the youth's chin, he said, "I think this looks a bit better. Any thoughts?" The other opened his mouth, wanting to speak. He'd finally managed to obtain a man's form, yet no matter how he tried, his mouth and tongue failed to obey his commands. The moment he opened his mouth and a slightly sluggish sound escaped, a warm liquid slipped out of his eyes. We're going to go back and talk about this in the discussion, so don't worry. Though Zhuzhi-Lang firmly believed that his lord could do no wrong, he secretly thought that his lord's brain actually wasn't too sharp. Well, it's a family genetic trait, huh? Even after receiving tacit permission to stay at TianLang-Jun's side, for a long period of time, Zhuzhi-Lang had no name. TianLang-Jun didn't often command the people around him, so he didn't need to call the youth by name, and hence, they passed many months in a muddle. Then one day, TianLang-Jun wanted to find a certain poetry collection from the human realm. He overturned boxes and cabinets but couldn't find it, and it wasn't until he was forced to call someone for help that he suddenly remembered he had a nephew whose presence was about the equivalent of a patch of empty air. And he was currently sitting in the corner of his study. But after calling out, "Hey!" he couldn't think of what to say next. TianLang-Jun frowned and thought for a while, and then said, "Have I never asked for your name?" "My lord, this subordinate has no name," his nephew honestly replied. "How can you have no name?" TianLang-Jun asked, bewildered. "That's so strange. Then what am I supposed to call you?" "Whatever my lord wishes to call me will do." After saying this, the youth walked to the bookcase and pulled out the poetry collection from where TianLang-Jun had randomly stuffed it after finishing his read. Then he presented it to his lord with both hands. TianLang-Jun was most satisfied. He took the collection. As he took it, he said, "Not having a name isn't much of a problem. We can simply give you one." After flipping through a couple of pages at random with his head lowered, he chose a phrase on a whim. "Let's call you Zhuzhi-Jun." With sharp eyes, he'd given the text a skim or two. "By tender green willows over placid river waters, I listen to my lover sing his song on the shore. The sun rises from the east as rain dims the west. Here clear skies and dark mingle in concord. Bamboo branch song, Zhuzhi-Si." His nephew shook his head. "You don't like it?" asked TianLang-Jun. He handed him the book. "So picky, then choose one yourself." A poem written by Liu Yushi expressing the conflicted feelings of a maiden in love. The original makes use of the hard-to-translate wordplay as clear and love are homonyms in Chinese. His nephew didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "My lord, only nobles can use such a title." "So particular, even at your tender age," said TianLang-Jun. "Fine, we'll call you Zhuzhi-Lang." Everything TianLang-Jun did was done flippantly. He'd flippantly given his nephew a life, and he flippantly give him a name. And at this moment and at this place due to him, Zhuzhi-Lang was flippantly born. But no matter how careless or how childish his behavior, he was still TianLang-Jun, the person for whom Zhuzhi-Lang would brave both fire and flood, for whom he would sacrifice 10,000 lives. One could scarcely imagine that TianLang-Jun was also pondering whether his nephew had spent too many years as a snake and had therefore become a little foolish. "Oh my God, blind leading the blind!" Said nephew refused to call him uncle and insisted on calling him my lord. He refused to go to be a carefree lordling on the southern border and insisted on following TianLang-Jun to be an errand boy. He even refused a good quality name, insisting on demoting himself. He truly was a bit foolish, but a brain that wasn't sharp was a lifelong problem, so it couldn't be helped. Let him do as he wishes. TianLang-Jun truly loved any and everything to do with humans. He probably felt that demons were a cold and boring lot. Yet when it came to humans, He nursed a strange passion for and a beautiful mental image of that foreign race, almost to an exaggerated extent. Any time he went anywhere, his most common destination was the borderlands. He'd pass the boundary markers, and on his short stays, he'd drink some wine while listening to stories. But on his long stays, it wasn't out of the question for him to spend a whole year, or even more, touring the human realm. TianLang-Jun probably wasn't the type who enjoyed being followed. He often dismissed his black armored generals in the hundreds or thousands, but as far as Zhuzhi-Lang was concerned, first off, he didn't talk too much, and second, he didn't get in the way. He only silently followed after TianLang-Jun, so it wouldn't have been very different if he hadn't existed at all. Sometimes he helped out by paying the bill or running an errand, and he was both convenient and considerate, so he didn't particularly annoy his uncle. Even when he was meeting with that maiden Su, neither of them minded Zhuzhi-Lang tagging along. As if of one mind, they both pretended Zhuzhi-Lang was a real snake, who could understand neither normal conversation nor more intimate exchanges. They focused on each other and acted like he wasn't there. Only once did TianLang-Jun try to drive Zhuzhi-Lang away, even telling him to get lost. As someone who'd always pursued grace and refinement, it had been some of the crudest language he'd ever used. So, he said he tried to drive Zhuzhi-Lang away. So does that mean Zhuzhi-Lang was around, just sitting there awkwardly in the corner while Lo Binghe was created? Oh my. How are we on chapter 92 already? How? But how? No, but how are we already on chapter 92? No. We'll talk about it in the discussion, damn it. Bailu Mountain. As for what TianLang-Jun and Su Xiyan's first meeting was like, Zhuzhi-Lang didn't witness it himself. At the time, he had, at TianLang-Jun's request, been standing in line for a famous author's newest work. Oh my god, the meta-ness of it. The meta-ness of it. Initially, he felt no curiosity about their meeting, but after it happened, TianLang-Jun fell into an odd state for a long time. While Zhuzhi-Lang was acting as a snake-shaped transportation device, TianLang-Jun said from his seat on his head, "In the plays I've read, maidens from the human realm are unanimously gentle as water, considerate and charming. Hence I thought that all maidens would be like this. So, I've been lied to. Zhuzhi-Lang, one can't read too many plays." Then another time his lord, who'd conclusively forgotten about not reading too many plays, was enjoying another one with the relish as he said, "Do I look like someone who didn't carry things? Who can't carry things? Or someone who's so poor they can't afford the trip home?" Then, when Zhuzhi-Lang was doing his laundry, TianLang-Jun crouched gracefully beside him while saying, "Zhuzhi-Lang, what do you think of my face? Is it not handsome? Typically speaking, shouldn't anyone who beholds my face immediately transform into a young woman tenderly budding into love?" Zhuzhi-Lang shook out the clothes that he'd wrung and hung them on a bamboo pole, respectfully agreeing. At the same time, he was thinking of how he'd read quite a few of his lord's nonsensical plays together with him. He didn't know what the others were like, but the way his lord was acting now was really rather akin to the love-struck teenage girls in those books. Therefore, he inevitably became curious. There's so much to talk about, but we're gonna wait till the discussion. In Zhuzhi-Lang's imagination, a maiden who'd entered an abandoned town filled with troublemaking demons all by herself, who, while dispatching evil spirits, had told TianLang-Jun to sing and play his music farther away so he wouldn't get in the way, and who, after dispatching them, handed TianLang-Jun 3 silvers, saying that was money for his trip home. Well, even if she wasn't burly and heavyset, she should at least look like a martial arts master with a fierce and ferocious eye. For all that, when he finally met the culprit behind TianLang-Jun's bout of philosophical soul-searching, which had tormented Zhuzhi-Lang for many days, he realized that the culprit in question was not quite like what he'd envisioned. TianLang-Jun loved wandering the human realm, and wandering the human realm required spending money, yet he never remembered to bring any. So Zhuzhi-Lang could only remember for him. However, TianLang-Jun had no concept of money's value, and therefore he knew no restraint. Whenever he felt gallant, he slapped down thousands at once, and it was impossible for Zhuzhi-Lang to stop him. With these spending habits, things would have been difficult even if they had had a mountain of gold or a sea of silver, and thus, in the end, they consistently ended up broke. Just as these two tourists were standing penniless in the street, a tall woman dressed in black strolled by, sword on her back, looking just like Lo Binghe. "Halt," said TianLang-Jun. As their shoulders brushed, that woman slightly raised her eyebrow, a mocking smile curling a corner of her lips, and she did indeed halt. "If one sights an injustice while on the road," said TianLang-Jun, "should they not draw their sword to give aid?" "If it's a matter of drawing her sword, this humble one will consider it," said the woman. "Conversely, if it's a matter of opening her purse, this humble one refuses, for you have yet to return the 3 silvers I lent you last time." "Is that so?" TianLang-Jun said. "Well, it's only 3 silvers, all right. Well, if you lend me 3 more, you can purchase me for 3 days. The woman flatly refused. "Your distinguished self doesn't look strong enough to carry any burdens. Rather, he looks like someone who has never toiled, who can't distinguish wheat from rice. What's the point of buying you?" Zhuzhi-Lang watched this for a long time and then said frankly, "My lord, I fear that this one is disparaging you for being too expensive." TianLang-Jun was indeed being disparaged. This wasn't new. Sometimes the servants and guards who'd served him secretly disparaged him too, especially when he's performing his passionate and dramatic recitals. But being told he was worth less than a mere 3 silvers, well, that was a bit too much. "Let's put all that aside for now," said TianLang-Jun. "Surely my face can't be worth less than 3 silvers. The woman choked a little, then studied his face for a while and smiled. True. It's worth that much." Then she tossed him a heavy ingot of gold. From then on, it was as if a dam had broken, and TianLang-Jun's expenditures in the human realm burst like a flood. He became even more unrestrained, even more unfettered, to the point that it was terrifying to watch. He'd found a rich patron, a mountain of gold. Whenever Zhuzhi-Lang pulled out an enemy purse with a slightly embarrassed expression, TianLang-Jun would happily and thoughtlessly go to that mountain and knock on her gates. Zhuzhi-Lang couldn't shake the feeling that something about this was wrong, that something was backwards. Why was Su Xiyan acting like one of those wealthy young masters in the plays, with their distinguished statuses and heaps of money? Why was TianLang-Jun acting like one of those pampered young ladies who had run away from home and was ignorant of the world? And why was Zhuzhi-Lang acting like the prudent servant girl accompanying that lady, running errands and doing odd jobs? Zhuzhi-Lang had attempted to alert his lord of this reversal of roles, to tell him that he needed to retrieve his dignity as the highest ruler of the demon realm, but TianLang-Jun seemed to find pleasure in this sugar daddy, sugar baby relationship. The blind passion that he had in the past directed to the entire human race was now poured entirely upon a single person. Well, that part carried over to Lo Binghe. Su Xiyan was truly a cold and ruthless, yet wholly extraordinary person. When they met up, she took them to see various rares and wonderful things, and all to manner of interesting and intriguing places. Forbidden codices Zhuzhi-Lang couldn't find no matter how he tried, a wondrous spirit mushroom within a certain hidden cave. Oh, a dew lake with waters that shone like crystal, an obscure yet marvelously skilled pipe-a-playing prostitute. When they weren't together, they'd see no trace of her for 10 or 15 days and would be unable to find her no matter how hard they tried. She never batted an eyelid, nor expressed a hint of infatuation, nor spoke of pining. She had her own plots and calculations, and she looked coldly on from the sidelines. Because half his blood came from the serpent race, Zhuzhi-Lang possessed a kind of natural animal instinct. He faintly sensed that this person who kept approaching them was an exceedingly dangerous entity. She wasn't like demon women, with their enchanting, by-the-book charm. Instead, she was solemn and driven, though she gave off the impression of being refined and courteous. Yet it was indeed only the impression of being refined and courteous. Zhuzhi-Lang dared not assume that he would in fact get off easy at her hand if it ever came to a true and brutal fight. Beneath the refined surface lay arrogance and indifference, along with an ambition that further concealed her scheming. As Huanhua Palace's second-in-command, Su Xiyan enjoyed a high and lofty status and commanded thousands at every turn. On top of that, the cultivation world that Huanhua Palace led, alongside the other major sects, had been the demon race's nemesis since ancient times. Su Xiyan was indeed someone incredibly dangerous as far as they were concerned. Zhuzhi-Lang reported all the information he'd found in full detail. Yet TianLang-Jun wasn't remotely concerned. Once he became infatuated with something, he disregarded even life and death as he threw all of the eggs into one basket. It doesn't sound familiar at all. It wasn't like he didn't know the truth. He just nonetheless never showed any doubt. The price of never doubting her was to be sealed beneath the sunless, skyless darkness of Mount Bailu for more than 10 years with no chance of return. I want to kill humans. During those more than 10 years, that was the line TianLang-Jun repeated most often. In the past, he had loved humans more than anything, so he'd never done such things. Without his vast demonic energy to sustain Zhuzhi-Lang's man-shaped form, Zhuzhi-Lang once again reverted to his half-snake appearance. Every time TianLang-Jun saw him arduously slithering back and forth, he would lash out with a "get lost," or he'd say, "Your slithering is far too ugly." Zhuzhi-Lang would then silently squirm away and search the outside for a place untouched by the sun and moon. There he would continue to practice his slithering, now rusted from years of disuse. His lord's temper had become unimaginably terrible, but Zhuzhi-Lang couldn't summon even the slightest bit of strength to feel hurt or angry. TianLang-Jun's get lost was telling him to get lost to the demon realm, or to get lost to the southern border, or to get lost to his own home, or to get lost to anywhere as long as he didn't remain in front of TianLang-Jun. TianLang-Jun couldn't stand for others to see him so wretched and downtrodden, in a state where he could beg neither for life nor death. From the moment of his birth, he'd been the demon race's most respected crown prince. He'd never tasted suffering, had always been composed and elegant, and had rejected all crude and vulgar things that would ruin his reputation. He'd even had some slight misophobia. He hated anything ugly. But now, as he was uglier than anyone. Covered in blood, he'd been sealed beneath 72 metal chains and 49 potent paper talismans, forced to watch every day as his body slowly rotted and began to stink. All the while, his mind remained perfectly clear, unable to lose consciousness even if he wished to. That gang from the cultivation world had lacked the ability to kill him outright, so they'd thought up every possible measure to torment him instead. Even Zhuzhi-Lang's ugly half-snake form looked slightly better than TianLang-Jun in this state. Having reverted to his old form, Zhuzhi-Lang was unable to speak, so TianLang-Jun began talking to himself. For almost half the hours and every day, he would recite the songs and dialogues from those plays. Sometimes, as TianLang-Jun was singing, he would abruptly cease, as if his throat had been slit. Zhuzhi-Lang would then know that it must have been a play Su Xiyan had taken them to watch. But after pausing for a time, TianLang-Jun would start again just as abruptly, continuing in a louder voice. Between his hoarse throat and the deserted valley, the lingering melodies drifted long and drawn out and heart-rending. Zhuzhi-Lang was unable to speak. He couldn't tell him to stop singing. He couldn't raise his arms. He couldn't cover his ears. He couldn't pretend or prevent himself from hearing the notes. More and more he understood what it meant to be utterly powerless. When something makes you sad, when something brings you pain, why continue to force yourself to do it? The only thing he could do was persistently, day after day, use leaves to carry the dew lake's water and bring it drop by drop to clean TianLang-Jun's eternally unhealing wounds. In all those years, they never learned of Lo Binghei's existence. Furthermore, Su Xiyan didn't succeed to her position of power as expected. Instead, she silently vanished to somewhere unknown. Even long after they'd once more greeted the sun and sky, they still hadn't learned. Therefore, when Zhuzhi-Lang saw that face for the first time at the southern border, he was so shocked that he forgot to complete the business he'd been tasked with. After a bout of fighting, he went straight back and reported it to TianLang-Jun. Hence, there had been the battle at the Holy Mausoleum. After Shinqingqiu had been spat out and settled with proper arrangements, TianLang-Jun had stared at Zhuzhi-Lang as his nephew single-mindedly fanned burning coals with a cattail leaf fan. "Do you think he's like me? Or like her?" Zhuzhi-Lang didn't very well know who this he and her referred to, or he knew very well. Didn't my lord say it himself? He's like his mother. TianLang-Jun shook his head and smiled. The way they pretend to be callous. In truth, both of them knew that Lo Binghei's tendency to be attached to and dependent on others, and his utter lack of reservations and his obstinate infatuation were more like TianLang-Jun. TianLang-Jun leaned his cheek on one hand as he watched the closed-eyed Xinqingqiu, and he sighed. But he's far more fortunate than I am. The person who Lo Binghei refused to let go of was someone like Xinqingqiu. That was indeed a fortunate thing. At least Xinqingqiu wouldn't summon the entire cultivation world to seal Lo Binghei beneath Sangjiang Mountain. On top of that, there had only been 2 people in this world who hadn't looked at Zhuzhi-Lang's ugly appearance with disgust. One was TianLang-Jun, and the other was Xinqingqiu. How about it? Asked TianLang-Jun. Do you want to steal that fortune for yourself? Zhuzhi-Lang stared at TianLang-Jun for a long time before understanding what he meant, and then he blushed a bright red. Oh, my lord! Steal it, said TianLang-Jun. We're all demons. Why fuss about something like this? Besides, he's only your younger cousin. What are you afraid of? The last lord of Mobei clan That last lord of the Mobei clan even openly stole his younger brother's official wife. I don't have such wishes. TianLang-Jun was confused. Then why is your face red? Was he encouraging Zhuzhi-Lang to have sex with Xinqingqiu while he was asleep? Sir! No! Zhuzhi-Lang patiently bore with him. My lord, if you hadn't asked me to find all those books or told me to read them with you or recited them aloud to force me to review them, this subordinate's face wouldn't have turned red. Oh, I'm sure he's talking about the regret of Qinshan. Because of this exchange, some strange things echoed in his ears from time to time, which made him unable to look at immortal Master Shin with a clear conscience. Zhuzhi-Lang understood why TianLang-Jun habitually teased him this way. Beneath all the ribbing was a desire to probe and provoke. From the day he emerged from beneath Bailu Mountain to the sun and sky, TianLang-Jun hadn't planned to use his new body for long, nor had he any plans regarding the future. But when he saw Xinqingqiu, TianLang-Jun actually felt a kind of relief. He thought, finally, someone to whom I can entrust my foolish nephew. We're going to talk about that. Zhuzhi-Lang's stupid brain could only revolve around other people. He never thought of himself. If he could find a new person to follow, then even after TianLang-Jun got himself killed, he wouldn't end up lost with nowhere to go. TianLang-Jun thought that Xinqingqiu wasn't a bad target to follow, regardless of what kind of follow it was. Having achieved this mysterious peace of mind, TianLang-Jun became increasingly reckless with throwing about his demonic energy, and his body's deterioration and decline hastened day by day to the point that his arms or fingers often fell off. Zhuzhi-Lang was overwhelmed to the point of exhaustion, trying to find means by which to repair him. One time, he was trying to use a needle and thread to mend his lord's limbs. TianLang-Jun held out his arm for Zhuzhi-Lang to prick however he wished and said, "Your instincts have always been very accurate." Zhuzhi-Lang gave a confirmation. Between me and Lo Binghei, who will win and who will lose? After a long silence, he said languidly, "Even if you don't say it, I know. I'm plainly going to lose." Zhuzhi-Lang bit off the thread and tied a knot. After today, how about you follow Peak Lord Shin? TianLang-Jun asked, sincere yet not. He's already taken care of Lo Binghei. Taking care of you as well shouldn't be too different. My lord should sleep, said Zhuzhi-Lang. But TianLang-Jun continued to talk nonsense. Aren't you heading to the immortal Master Shin's tent tonight to help him remove the ties that bind? This is all connected. I was wondering if this was going to be connected. You were listening when I asked if he and Lo Binghei had dual cultivated before. His reaction made it obvious that they haven't. The early bird catches the worm. Do you understand what I'm saying? How is he in... Oh my God! What? What? Oh my God! Zhuzhi-Lang acted like he couldn't hear and bowed down to remove TianLang-Jun's shoes. But then Zhuzhi-Lang's hands went empty. TianLang-Jun had crooked his legs so the shoes were firmly upon the beast's skin cover. What must I do to crush your self-esteem? He asked in all seriousness. To make you lose heart and give up on me so that you'll leave. My lord has read too many plays and scripts, said Zhuzhi-Lang. That trope is old hat. You can never crush the subordinate's self-esteem. That's why my lord should sleep. I don't want to go to sleep so early. Quickly, go to Peak Lord Shin's tent. I'll come see you two after a bit. My lord, you're so willful, Zhuzhi-Lang said helplessly. Pestering others endlessly, full of wild fantasies, forever coming up with those stupid suggestions. Haven't I been so willful this whole time? Said TianLang-Jun. So how about it? Why not consider leaving me? His lord was acting like a drunk today. The number of things he had said that left people unable to laugh or cry had multiplied by 10. Zhuzhi-Lang shook his head and reached out several more times before he finally caught hold of TianLang-Jun's shoes. He yanked them off by force and repeated, my lord should sleep. TianLang-Jun was pushed onto the bed and forcefully covered with a blanket. You're becoming more and more like a mother, he said. Then he sighed. Do you think your uncle is only poking fun at you? You don't urge me to stop, nor do you seek a way out for yourself. You're always like this, Zhuzhi-Lang. What are you going to do in the future? As expected, I can't bring myself to hate humans. TianLang-Jun had said this to Shin Qingqiu. When Zhuzhi-Lang heard these words, he was actually a little happy for his lord. TianLang-Jun had finally admitted that his true heart had never changed. Finally, he would no longer need to force himself. Amidst the rolling dust, oh my God, and falling rubble, TianLang-Jun sighed and muttered, Zhuzhi-Lang, that appearance of yours truly doesn't look good. This time, Zhuzhi-Lang had no need to complain. Its only thought was that it still had a bit of strength left, enough to hold on for a little longer, so that its lord wouldn't die with it. There was no need for him to worry that dying alongside it would be unsightly. As Maigu Ridge transformed into smoke and dust with a thunderous roar, an enormous snake plummeted down towards the heart of the low river, which glittered like silver scales. In truth, I can't believe I'm at the end. Damn it. In truth, Shin Qingqiu hadn't finished listening to what TianLang-Jun had been saying. For after that first sentence, there had been another quiet, heard only by Zhuzhi-Lang. TianLang-Jun had said, but why is loving a person such a difficult thing? At the time, Zhuzhi-Lang had been unable to squeeze out a smile, nor had it been able to speak. As if lost in thought, it had flicked out its tongue, spraying TianLang-Jun with a face full of snake saliva. It truly is difficult, it thought. But no matter how difficult, it's less difficult than making one's heart stop loving. Well, okay. Well, all right. Why can't we have more Zhuzhi-Lang? My soul needed this. But, oh man, it feels so good. It feels so good to get back into MXTX writing that makes my heart feel better. Oh my gosh. Oh, I needed this. I needed some palate cleansing MXTX work that's on the money, and this did exactly what I needed to do. MXTX is such a good writer, and even back at this age, she's such a good writer, and I love her, and I'm just like, just don't write about Lo Binghe with Shin Qingqiu right now. Because it's like, she has these other characters in the story depicting them being like, well, it's a good thing Lo Binghe has Shin Qingqiu. And I'm like, yeah, nobody else would want him. It's a good thing he has him. And I'm like, they talk up how good Shin Qingqiu and Lo Binghe are for one another. But then when you see them in reality, you're like, but they have so much work to do. So this chapter set was so good. I really felt bad for Zhuzhi-Lang this entire novel. I'm glad we got an extra that focused on him because Zhuzhi-Lang has always been really sympathetic from the very beginning. Like from the moment we met him all throughout his adventure, and he kind of is like Wen Ning from Modao Zushi a little bit, only even more sympathetic and pathetic, but you're just like, oh. And then when you find out that he killed Gong Yi Zhao, I was like, but here's the thing. this is the testament to how good a character is. When I liked Gong Yizhao a lot, and I was so frustrated when he was killed, to make Zhuzhi-Lang the murderer, and I still felt bad for Zhuzhi-Lang. I did. I felt bad because he was just like, well, I was just doing it because that was what we had to do. And he was just in the way. It's fine, right? And Shin Qingshou's like in a puddle, like, oh my God, what did you do? And Zhuzhi-Lang's like, well, didn't I do what I was supposed to? And it's like, you can't even be mad at him. It's like this whole family, Zhuzhi-Lang, Lo Binghe, and TianLang-Jun, they're so ridiculous and pathetic sometimes, but you just look at them and you're like, I don't know what to do with you. It's just... I had somebody in the comments try to tell me back with chapters 78 and 79, they were like, well, Lo Binghe needs to be forgiven because he's half demon. And I was like, my eye roll was existential. And I was like, yes, he is half demon. So you could say that the demon part of him causes him to be the way that he is, but he's also half human. So he shouldn't be that way. So it's like, no. The half human contradicts the half demon. So I'm not buying that argument. That's an excuse. That's an excuse. Like even TianLang-Jun and Zhuzhi-Lang can behave at times. I'm like, oh my God. But I want to go through this chapter because I wanted to point out with TianLang-Jun and Su Xiyan, the differences. What does Lo Binghe take from each of them? Because he takes things from each of them, and I'm big into genealogy, so I want to get into that. There's only one image for this chapter set. It's an incredible image for a number of reasons. It's of, sorry that you get Xilian and Huacheng there. It is of Zhuzhi-Lang following behind TianLang-Jun and Su. I want to point out a couple things. One, Su, I noticed this on the back cover of Volume 3. Su has a very, like, non-traditional look for a female cultivator in this series. Like all the women cultivators in this novel have been like buxomy, big voluptuous femme fatales. Not Su Xiyan. Su Xiyan kind of has like, I thought this was like Gong Yizhao for a second. I thought it was a man, but no, she just has a like not typical appearance. She doesn't like exude femininity in the way that a lot of the other female characters in the story do, but she looks a lot like Lo Binghe. She looks a lot like Lo Binghe. I will say her features look like Lo Binghe, but the youthful kind of like puppy dog in love expression that's on TianLang-Jun's face is very Lo Binghe. Like Lo Binghe is a mixture of the two of them. But my favorite part of this whole image is this tiny little, look at Zhuzhi-Lang in the corner. Look at him. Look at how sad he is. He's like, this is what my life has been reduced to. I am like, there's another series I'm watching, The Apothecary Diaries, whose characters have similar traits to some of these characters. And this is very much a Gaoxun face. Very much a Gaoxun face. But yeah, Lo Binghe is very much a combination of his parents. That's for damn sure. And we're going to talk about that along with other things in this chapter because I thought this chapter set was really good. And my soul needed this cleansing. I was starting to get like combative in the comments again. I just don't, bringing up Shin Qingshou and Lo Binghe right now just brings out the worst in me. So I'm like, I need a break. I need a break from them. And this chapter set was a good start to that. As far as where the chapter goes in Seven Seas, here it is here. We're halfway through Zhuzhi-Lang backstory. It's way up here in the Seven Seas. So it's towards the beginning alongside, the whole multiverse chapter. There's next week, we're looking at chapters 93 and 94, which you'll notice Seven Seas has chapter 93, the second to last chapter. What? And then chapter 94 is way up at the beginning. So these are clearly about two different stories next week that we're going to tackle. These are clearly two different stories next week that we're going to look into. Why they are so far apart in the Seven Seas agenda, we'll have to find out next week. But they put the happy, fluffy stuff towards the beginning, which has me very concerned with this last chapter. But we won't get to that until the very end, so it'll be fine. Little concerned about next week since this is immediately following the wine chapter, but maybe it'll be about something else. Who knows? But chapter 94 is way up there, so maybe that one will be happy-go-lucky to balance out that one. Again, I'm making assumptions. We don't know yet. But anyway, I felt really bad for Zhuzhi-Lang in this chapter set because especially Zhuzhi-Lang just referring to themselves as an it was it's very and I want to say dehumanizing. They're a demon, but still, it's just this idea that they don't even view themselves as a high enough life form to be considered a being. They're just an it or a thing, is very sad. And all I just picture is this little snake man scrounging around on the ground endlessly until TianLang-Jun felt bad for him and was like, oh, hey, nephew, I guess I'll give you a body. Oh my God. So what's interesting is that TianLang-Jun, he just says, it's ugly. Like, so TianLang-Jun is very blunt. I'm going to talk about this. TianLang-Jun is very blunt and straightforward in what he says, in a way. Very just like, man, it's so ugly. But he seems very straightforward. But he kind of masks with kind of like a cynicism. Well, cynicism's not the right word. But he masks his true feelings at times. Which is interesting because you know who else is blunt and seems to mask their true feelings? Su Xiyan is also blunt and straightforward, but can also mask their true feelings. And I'm going to take a green marker to illustrate what Lo Binghe takes. This attribute he takes from both of them. So he gets both of them. You get a different green marker. But yeah, Lo Binghe is blunt and straightforward. He doesn't have a lot of finesse. So he's just very blunt and straightforward, which is very similar to the two of them. Now, does Su Xiyan have some finesse to her? Yeah, she's a general, she's a cultivator, we get all that. But they're both pretty straightforward and to the point. But I like that TianLang-Jun complaining that Zhuzhi-Lang was too ugly almost seemed like he was kind of mad about it. Like, he's like, why are you so ugly? You're my nephew, and you shouldn't be like this. And then he asks if Zhuzhi-Lang remembers his mom, and Zhuzhi-Lang's like, mm-mm. And he's like, well, she was a monster fucker, so you know. This family has also a tendency to fuck monsters. So there's that. And we're going to talk about this here in a little bit. I'm going to say something here in a little bit that you're going to go Romania, and I'm going to be like, but you all are thinking it too. So we'll get to that point here in a little bit. But I feel really bad for Zhuzhi-Lang because he doesn't remember his mom. And Zhuzhi-Lang is like, well, that was my sister, my little sister. She had sex with a snake, and here you are. So, you know, she died, and now I'm coming to see you. And they do explain that the demons have cold blood. They're cold-blooded. And they just kind of gloss over and don't care much about death, which, could you tie that to Lo Binghe? Maybe. The idea that they're very cold when it comes to relatives. And then you could argue that Su Xiyan is similar in that she is cold when it comes to familiarity. And I would say that for Lo Binghe, he has this idea about people in general. He's generally cold to others. So he comes by it honest from both of his parents, right? We're going to put Lo Binghe up here. He comes by it pretty honest in general. The thing about it is that TianLang-Jun's whole reason for being cold and blunt towards each other is they're demons. That's just how that goes. But for Su Xiyan, my headcanon is kind of that her coldness is also due to the fact that you have the Huan Palace Master, who is a trifling bitch and is so awful, and she just tries to distance herself from people as to not involve them. That's kind of my headcanon that goes along with it, but I'm sure people can comment, 2 and 4 against that or whatever. But yeah, so then TianLang-Jun's like, why are you following me? And again, Zhuzhi-Lang, the idea of devotion, this family is devoted, if anything. Where TianLang-Jun, he shows kindness to Zhuzhi-Lang and doesn't back away in disgust. So what does Zhuzhi-Lang do? He follows him. Shin Xingqiu as Xinyan shows kindness to Lo Binghe. What does Lo Binghe do? He follows him. And then TianLang-Jun is the interesting one, where he seems to be attracted to Su Xiyan, not because she's kind and considerate, but because she's different than what he's been told. So we're going to talk about that too in a little bit, but that part is a little bit against the grain. But yeah, Lo Binghe takes a bit from Zhuzhi-Lang in that devotion as well, right? And from his dad, but we'll get into that. So he's like, you're still ugly and stubborn, and that's not very personable, and I can't stand to watch this any longer. So he ends up feeling bad for Zhuzhi-Lang, and he grants Zhuzhi-Lang a body because he feels sorry for him and he cares about him. I don't know if Lo Binghe would do anything like that or acknowledge that consideration, but Zhuzhi-Lang, you know, Zhuzhi-Lang puts out this apathetic, kind of cynical presence, but that's kind of been developed over time with losing Su Xiyan. But he's actually really this like kind of, you know, very compassionate person underneath it. He's just a demon, and so it's harder for him to showcase that. But him giving Zhuzhi-Lang a body, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to. He could have been, you know, just cold-hearted, but that shows a little bit of compassion, right? I don't know if Lo Binghe would do that, if I'm being honest. And then he had the body of a man around 15 or 16. And then that moment, there is also something romantic and sexual about TianLang-Jun that's so effortless. Like the idea that whenever he gives him the body, he just goes down and then he like holds his chin and says, I think this looks better. Any thoughts? I'm like, hello, sir. Like, just what? And then, but of course, the sad part is that when Zhuzhi-Lang first gets his body, he doesn't know how to speak. And so he just like tries to make a noise and it doesn't work. And but he has tears coming down his face, like from he's been crying from getting this moment. I'm like, y'all. So anyway, I'm really glad that we got flashbacks to TianLang-Jun meeting Su Xiyan. So Zhuzhi-Lang firmly believes that his lord could do no wrong. So I'm going to put on here, Lo Binghe also gains like devotion and loyalty from his cousin, Zhuzhi-Lang. Gets that from him, right? And so TianLang-Jun doesn't command people around him, so he didn't need to call him by name. So TianLang-Jun, this is different. TianLang-Jun is just kind of like lackadaisy when it comes to command, which Lo Binghe kind of inherits as well, because even though Lo Binghe has the command of a ton of people, he's just kind of like, right? Like, in the OG novel, it could be considered a little bit different, but Su Xiyan, she is the commander of a lot of forces, and she seems to take that job very seriously to a point. Lo Binghe is just kind of like, when he's in Huanhua Palace, it's kind of disorderly, and everybody just kind of does what he says because he's the strongest, which is kind of like TianLang-Jun in his position. He's just the strongest, so they just kind of like fall in line, but he doesn't really hold any kind of like authoritative presence, right? Not like his mother did. Anyway. So yeah, so then they talk about the name. Now, at first, Zhuzhi-Lang doesn't like Zhuzhi-Jun because he doesn't believe that he deserves to have that sort of title. I did love the poem that was based off of his name, the Bamboo Branch song, by tender green willows over placid river waters. I listen to my lover sing his song on the shore. The sun rises from the east as rain dims in the west. Here clear skies and dark mingle and concord. Like, that's so sweet. Like, I love that. It's very romantic and it's very tender and sweet and soft. And so they call him Zhuzhi-Lang. And yeah, and they talk about how TianLang-Jun is very flippant. He just does things on a whim. Seems familiar. He does things on a whim. That sounds... Meanwhile, Su Xiyan is very calculating. She's very calculating and decisive. Now, here's the thing. Do I think that Lo Binghe is as much of a strategist as his mother? No. Do I think he's somewhat calculating? Yes. Do I also think he does a lot of things on a whim, mainly for his Shizun? Yes. So there's a lot going on there. But also one thing that TianLang-Jun is that Lo Binghe is not, is he is very much romantic with a love of plays and literature. Oddly enough, there are bits and pieces of TianLang-Jun and Su Xiyan that Xingqiu kind of embodies in a weird way, or Xinyan kind of embodies in a weird way. Like like TianLang-Jun, for example, and I'm going to use a different color. I guess I'll use orange because it's a different color to do Xingqiu. But in terms of being like calculating and decisive, Xingqiu kind of is a wee bit, at least with planning things out. And in terms of like, now, does Xingqiu like romantic plays necessarily? No. But does Xingqiu have like an obsession with literature to the point where he's memorized everything about it? Kind of like TianLang-Jun has memorized everything about the plays? Yeah, kind of. So there is a connection between TianLang-Jun and Su Xiyan that kind of in a weird way mirrors Xingqiu and Lo Binghe in a weird way, right? There's little bits and pieces of both stories that kind of have like a mirror effect, sort of. But yeah, so Zhuzhi-Lang never calls TianLang-Jun uncle or he just calls him my lord. And TianLang-Jun is like, well, it almost felt like TianLang-Jun was saying, well, my nephew's kind of stupid and there's not much I can do about that. So just let him do what he wants. And I was like, oh my God. But TianLang-Jun loved everything to do with humans because he felt the demons were cold and boring, but he had this romantic, exaggerated, like exoticness to humanity that he loved. And so he would go and like have drinks and listen to stories. That too is also kind of like Xingqiu. The idea of like just listening to stories and being around people. I mean, the whole first volume of Scum Villain was essentially Xingqiu playing the role of Xingqiu and going around listening to stories and hanging out with people. Like that was his main thing, was he liked the stories and the people and the characters, and he's kind of like TianLang-Jun in that sense. But I liked the implication that Zhuzhi-Lang was always the third wheel and was at every date. And there is the implication that TianLang-Jun tried to tell him to get lost once, like when him and Su Xiyan were like probably going to do the business, and Zhuzhi-Lang's like, no, I'm not going. So he just stays there, and I'm like, oh my God. But also the idea that they're like right off distance is this snake coiled up while they're like getting it on. Oh my God. And Zhuzhi-Lang's too innocent to understand. But then we have chapter 92, which, by the way, Reiki pointed out in their spoiler tag things, these are both called The Song of Zhuzhi-Lang Part 1 and Part 2. At this point, I don't know if any names, I feel like they're going to give us the names of the parts in the chapters as we get to it. So, but then we have Bailu Mountain. And so Zhuzhi-Lang wasn't at TianLang-Jun and Su Xiyan's first meeting, but he'd been in line for another famous author's newest work. Again, tying a little bit to Xingqiu, but also to Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky. Like whose new work? Who's writing these works? Was Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky writing other works before Xinyan came along as Xingqiu? I mean, he was reborn as the baby, so I guess not. Now the timelines don't add up in that sense, but still. How dare. But anyway, so TianLang-Jun has this very romantic view of how maidens are. He's like, I thought maidens from the human realm were charming and considerate, and I've been lied to because she's not like this. And then Zhuzhi-Lang's like, and I like that then Zhuzhi-Lang's like doing the laundry, and TianLang-Jun like gets down and he's like, is my face okay? Am I handsome? Am I fine? Would women fall in love with me if they looked at this? And Zhuzhi-Lang's like, I don't know. What? But that feels very much like Lo Binghe too, where he's like self-conscious of if his lover will approve. He's constantly seeking his lover's validation, which sounds an awful lot like something that Lo Binghe would do. Would need that constant validation, right? So Zhuzhi-Lang's like, well, who is this person that he's trying to get his attention? So then He basically devotes all of his love to this one woman who kind of casually ignores him at first and throws him a glance. It almost seemed to me like we don't ever see TianLang-Jun be jealous. That is the one thing we never get to see him be. He's not really ever jealous of her or anybody around her, which is like Lo Binghei's jealousy and possessiveness. We don't ever really get to see demonstrated by either parent. So that might be something that's just special for Lo Binghei, right? But we have this idea that TianLang-Jun, he devotes 100% of his love to Su Xiyan. And that's when he ends up being betrayed when he gets stuck in the mountain. Which, here's the thing, that has such a connection to Lo Binghei, where Lo Binghei devotes every bit of himself to Shin Chingcho, just like TianLang-Jun devoted all of himself to Su Xiyan. Now, Su Xiyan has this way of like being kind of like, what does it say there? She like raises an eyebrow and has a mocking smile. So she's kind of like mocking and has an arrogance about her. And that is very Lo Binghei. So he has his mom's like calculating, but mocking and arrogant tone at times. But then he immediately turns into like TianLang-Jun and becomes a big fluffy romantic in like 2 seconds. So it's like he gets the best of both worlds. But yeah, so she's like, you know, your distinguished self doesn't look strong enough to carry burdens. You look like a spoiled brat. So what's the point of buying you? And Zhuzhi-Lang's like, yeah, she says you're being too expensive. So yeah, so there's this idea of the role reversal where she's the wealthy individual with the money and he's the one that's acting like a maiden trying to be bought out. So I honestly like the role reversal. I like the idea that he's this romantic. He's like Ewan McGregor in Moulin Rouge and she's like a Butch Satine. She's like a very gruff Nicole Kidman playing Satine that takes no shit from anybody and is a cultivator instead of a courtesan. And he's like Ewan McGregor that's like beauty, truth, and love, searching after the Bohemian Revolution. And then, yeah, they're just both together. And Zhuzhi-Lang is like, Jean Leguizamo's character. But yeah, I do love the role reversal. I love how it is. And to where Zhuzhi-Lang is just kind of confused, but goes along with it. I love MXTX doing this. I would love MXTX to do more role reversals like this in their fiction. I will praise Scum Villain for one thing. It has a lot of female characters, and they're all very different. And the other two series, bless Mo Dao Zuji's heart, there's hardly any women in there. There's like 2, maybe 3. And Heaven Official's Blessing, there is some gender bending, so that's fun. But I always wished there were more female characters in MXTX's work, so that's the one aspect of Scum Villain I've really enjoyed so far, is that there are several. But yeah, Su Xiyan, like she tries to act cold and ruthless, and TianLang-Jun just completely falls in love with her. And they talk about all the places that they go to. They go to where the sun, moon, dew mushroom is. They go to the lake where it's at. I don't know who the Pippa playing prostitute is. I don't know if we've met them yet or not, or if they're going to come into the story. But it's like she would disappear for 2 weeks at a time, and then she'd show back up. But she never showed any sign of infatuation or spoke of pining. She had her own plots of calculations and looked on coldly from the sidelines. Now that in itself, the idea of her not showing any signs of love is Shin Chingcho to a T. Like the whole infatuation of Tianlang-Jun with Su Xiyan and her showing no signs that she was remotely interested is mirroring Lo Binghei with Shin Chingcho so much. So much to the point where it's ridiculous that they're so similar, right? But I like that Zhuzhi-Lang's like, she's not like a demon woman that's a succubus or trying to like lure anyone in with like lust and seduction. No, she's just who she is. And TianLang-Jun falls hook, line, and sinker. She comes across as this high and lofty commander, a lot like Shin Chingcho, and he falls in love with it, just like Lo Binghei does. But Zhuzhi-Lang reports all that he knows, and TianLang-Jun ignores it. Once he became infatuated with something, he disregarded life and death and threw all of his eggs into one basket. It wasn't like he didn't know the truth, he just never showed any doubt. So the difference is that Zhuzhi-Lang relays all this information that he finds to TianLang-Jun, and TianLang-Jun decides to ignore it because he loves Su Xiyan. Whereas nobody was around to inform Lo Binghe of what's going on. He just blindly accepted Shen Qingqiu as someone he was going to devote himself to. But then there's a whole... I do really like MXTX's style of writing here, that we've already been told in the main story about TianLang-Jun's capture, and we've been told about Su Xiyan's fall. So MXTX, what I like about this chapter set is she does not see the need to go back and revisit those chapters. Like, she's like, you already know the story. I don't have to tell you again. And instead, it cuts straight to them in Bailu Mountain, like for 10 years later. And he's like, I want to kill humans. Which is really, does he really want to kill humans? Or is he just feeling betrayed and furious over it? And that is very much a Lo Binghe trait. Ta-da! So, and yeah, because when he actually does get out, he wants to merge the worlds together, but he's not like, I'm going to kill all of humankind. He's not like that type of revenge seeking, right? So it is a bit different. But he's mad too, not only because he can't be with the woman that he loves, but then putting them into the mountain makes Zhuzhi-Lang go back to being a little squirming snake man again. And TianLang-Jun's pissed off about that because he's like, oh, well, me helping you become a person, now it's all null and void, so we're all just powerless, and that sucks. It does suck. It's awful to watch, right? And so then TianLang-Jun kept telling him to try to get lost and go home. He couldn't stand for others to see him so wretched and downtrodden, in a state where he could neither beg for life nor death. From the moment of his birth, he'd been the demon race's most respected crown prince and had never tasted suffering, and had been composed and elegant. And he had misophobia. I was like, what is misophobia? That's one thing I was like, what is that? It is, a fear of germs and contamination. Interesting. Interesting. He hated anything ugly, and now he was uglier than anyone. Well, that's interesting. So one thing is that he hates he hates the idea of being unclean. And that's when he like decays and starts to break down. What's interesting with that is that Lo Binghe has this anger at anyone who looks down on him because of his blood. Like, he hates anybody that looks down on him because he's a demon and because he's half demon, which kind of connects in some way adjacently to his dad's idea of not liking being unclean. So there is a connection there. There is some connection to why he would feel that way. But what really sucks is that he's like covered in blood underneath all these chains and talismans and slowly deforming, and Zhuzhi-Lang is just keeping him alive like day after day, and he's just reduced to like singing these random songs and reciting play lines to himself, and Zhuzhi-Lang can't tell him to stop singing. It's honestly really sad and heartbreaking. And he's like, when something makes you sad and brings you pain, why do you force yourself to do it? And they give us our answer at the end with the line about love. But it's just really sad that Zhuzhi-Lang, he can't help TianLang-Jun. TianLang-Jun doesn't know where Su Xiyan is. And all he can do is lament and just sit there in his sorrow. And it's really sad. But what's even sadder is they never learned about Lo Binghe. And so they never knew what happened to her and about Lo Binghe. So up until the mausoleum, they didn't know about Lo Binghe. And then that adds another layer to the last chapters of Volume 3, where when Shin-Ching-Cho and them finally have that discussion with TianLang-Jun about Su Xiyan, and when he's about to cry and he's like, truly? She truly loved me? She truly gave up her life for Lo Binghe and did all this? And they're like, yeah, she did love you. And it's like all of this moment here where he's in doubt that she loved him all gets rectified and comes full circle at the end of volume 3. And it's like, oh, it's crazy, right? It's like, this was such a good connection to all of that. And I loved it. So then there's the Holy Mausoleum. And Shin-Ching-Cho is there. He had all the arrangements. And then he's like, do you think that Lo Binghe is like me or like her? And Zhuzhi-Lang's like, well, you said Lo Binghe looks like his mother. And TianLang-Jun is like, no, he pretends to be callous. But that's all an act. He's like, he's more like me. And then he looks at Shin-Ching-Cho and says, he's far more fortunate than I am. Because he has someone like Shin-Ching-Cho, and Shin-Ching-Cho wouldn't summon the cultivation world to seal him beneath a mountain. So that is the difference that we establish, is the idea that unlike her, Shin-Ching-Cho would not hurt Lo Binghe. And that he doesn't judge Lo Binghe. So he believes that he's better off. It's like, you've got someone like there. So then there's this scene where TianLang-Jun's like, so, do you want to just have sex with Shin-Ching-Cho while he's standing here unconscious? And I was like, wait, what? But why? And then he's like, well, just go ahead and take it. We're all demons, so what's the big deal? It's like, you start to feel bad for TianLang-Jun, and you think you're like, oh man, he was a great guy, and he just got like all this stuff taken from him, and you just feel bad for him. And then he's like, hey, do you want to like assault Shin-Ching-Cho's body while he's asleep so you're not a virgin anymore, Zhuzhi-Lang? And you're like, wait, what? You're like, back up, good feeling gone. Like, I swear, like father, like son, they do all these things and you feel bad for him. And then in 2 seconds, you're like, wait, no, I take everything back. What are you doing? Like, and the thing about it is that Zhuzhi-Lang is kind of like, he kind of likes Shin-Ching-Cho because Shin-Ching-Cho's got a harem because he's the protagonist. I kind of want to read a fan fiction where Shin-Ching-Cho falls for Zhuzhi-Lang. Not in this circumstance. Not under these circumstances. I don't want anyone to be assaulted while they're asleep. That's gross and weird. No, I'm like, when you think about it, Zhuzhi-Lang is loyal. He's kind. He's considerate, kind of to a fault, but there's an innocence to it. But he's not an ass, and he's not a brat. Like, and Shin-Ching-Cho's kind of a monster fucker. So why not? Why not? Why not have this world where Zhuzhi-Lang could have nice things? I would read that. I'd read the hell out of that, actually. I don't support Zhuzhi-Lang and TianLang-Jun relationship because they're nephew and uncle, and that's incest, and I can't do incest. I know Japanese cultures are different. I don't know if Chinese cultures are different in that regard. I can't do it. Sorry, no incest for this girl. But I would support Shin-Ching-Cho and Zhuzhi-Lang. Keep it in the family. I would support that. This chapter made me want to, under different circumstances, kind of want to see what that relationship would play out like. Now, I think that Shin-Ching-Cho would eventually maybe get bored with Zhuzhi-Lang, and maybe he'd want something a little bit more challenging, as it were. But I would watch that. I don't see what the problem is. Zhuzhi-Lang deserves some loving. I know a lot of people ship Gong Yi Zhao with him, and I'm like, he kills him and you ship him with him. That's like such a trope. But I'm not opposed to that either, but I need more to justify that. Here, there's some bones here. There's some bones. I could support that. And the thing that gets me is that TianLang-Jun wanted Zhuzhi-Lang to be with Shin-Ching-Cho because he knows Shin-Ching-Cho won't judge Zhuzhi-Lang. And he wants Zhuzhi-Lang to be happy. and he wants Zhuzhi-Lang to have someone to take care of him when his body is gone and TianLang-Jun's left him. And I'm like, that's insanely sad. Oh my God. And here's the thing. I'm sure a lot of people in the comments will be like, well, TianLang-Jun was pushing Zhuzhi-Lang in a relationship with Shin-Ching-cho, but neglected his own son. And I'm like, TianLang-Jun had no clue about Lo Binghe until like 5 minutes ago. Zhuzhi-Lang has followed him since the beginning and has stuck by his side through thick and thin. And so the idea of TianLang-Jun wanting happiness for Zhuzhi-Lang makes a lot of sense. Because he's like, you and I have been together forever. I want you to be happy too. Here's your chance. They don't know Lo Binghe at all. And Lo Binghe doesn't really seem to want to know them. So I kind of get it. It's sad and heartbreaking, but I kind of get like, he's like, I don't even know about you. Why would I want to, it's like, it's like if an estranged father found out he had a kid that was 25 years old and he's like, oh, I've kind of missed all the important milestones and you're a grown-ass man now. Hi. My nephew and I have been together forever. So I kind of get this bond with my nephew, but, and I'm not excusing TianLang-Jun from completely ignoring Lo Binghe, because them ignoring Lo Binghe in the main story is really sad and really heartbreaking. But I get now why TianLang-Jun was trying to push Zhuzhi-Lang so hard to be in a relationship with Shin-Ching-cho, because he wanted someone to watch after Zhuzhi-Lang after he died, and that's really sad. And I'm like, damn, I don't know if Lo Binghe would do that. I don't know if Lo Binghe would push Shin-Ching-cho to be able to be in a relationship with like Liu Qingge if he thought he was going to die. He'd probably say, over my dead body, no. So they are a bit different there, right? So then he's like, well, why don't you just follow Peak Lord Shin? He's already taken care of Lo Binghe. He could take care of you as well. You guys could have a threesome, which adds so much more context to that tent scene, because he's like, oh, the three of you together? This will all work out great. I kind of want it now. I kind of want a threesome with Zhuzhi-Lang and Shin-Ching-cho and Lo Binghe. But of course, Lo Binghe wouldn't touch Zhuzhi-Lang, so it's perfect. You just got a pickle sandwich in between a slice of snake skin and some dog meat. I don't know. The metaphor doesn't work. Just call it a pickle sandwich and leave the two pieces of bread. Demonic bread. A pickle sandwich between two pieces of demonic bread. There, we'll do that. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of rooting for it. I kind of want it now. Why can't I have these nice things? Why can't I have these less angsty things? But yeah. And then Zhuzhi-Lang's like, you read too many scripts and plays. He's like, that's why you should go to sleep. You're not going to crush my self-esteem. Like, no. And then TianLang-Jun's like, I want you to lose heart and give up on me and go try to be with someone else. And he's like, no, I chose to follow you and I'm going to keep following you. And that's just how it's going to be. And I do love when MXTX does the whole, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I think that's amazing. And so then TianLang-Jun comments how Zhuzhi-Lang is like a mother. What are you going to do in the future? And then I love MXTX cutting back to the end of volume 3. Like, the time jumps in this chapter set were really well done. They were perfect. They filled in all the gaps with Zhuzhi-Lang. They gave me everything I wanted from those chapters. Like, any of the information I wanted from Zhuzhi-Lang, these chapters gave to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we cut back to the end where they're about to die. And Zhuzhi-Lang can't talk anymore, right? Because he's about to die. And then he says, why is loving a person such a difficult thing? It's difficult, but no matter how difficult, it's less than not loving. What are you two doing? My dog's being silly. Yeah. So love is hard, but it's worse to not love someone. Which is like the theme of this series. That whole thing was amazing. I'm so glad that we got an actual chapter set with Zhuzhi-Lang. That was awesome. That was so good. I knew that this is like the shortest chapter set of all of them in this novel set, by the way, because I was looking at part 32, chapters 91 and 92, which are only like in the book pages 119 to 129. It's only 20 pages. And I was like, this is going to be the shortest segment of the whole volume to read. And I was kind of sad about that, but I was like, maybe it'll be like a full-on little short story and we'll have lots to talk about. And we did. Now next week is not that story. Next week is chapter 93, which is like 20 pages in itself, like the length of what we just read. And then chapter 94 is like 81 and 91, 91 to 101 is like, so we have like 50 pages next week between chapters 93 and 94, which is a lot longer than this. It's like twice the length of what we read this week. But you know what? After last week where things were like, where I was so frustrated and mad, I needed a palate cleanser. You guys are being ridiculous. My dogs are being ridiculous. I needed a palate cleanser. And this chapter set was exactly that. So looking at our board, Lo Binghe, I feel like the most that Lo Binghe really took from his mom, other than his looks, was that she could be calculating, which the end of volume 3 sure showed us that. And then she also could be very mocking and arrogant, right? And also seeming to be blunt and straightforward. Whereas most of Lo Binghe, other than like the romanticism and the love of literature, most of it involved with like being lackadaisy, doing things on a whim, being self-conscious, devoting 100% of themselves to the person they love, feeling betrayal and being furious, hating the idea of being unclean, like all those things are Lo Binghe. So he takes after his dad a lot. More than TianLang-Jun wanted to let him know at the beginning. So it's like, okay. But yeah. And then even Xinxingqiu takes a lot from both of them, which is crazy. So yeah, next week is going to be weird because Seven Seas has split the next 2 chapters I'm reading to opposite ends of the book. Gonna be wild, y'all. Gonna be wild. But chapters 93 and 94 are going to be next week. And I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm hoping we're entering an era where we've got some chapters that'll involve some other characters that are not Lo Binghe and Xinxingqiu. I need a break from them. But considering that they're so far apart and so far removed, I have a feeling we might go back to the 2 of them next week, which is fine. I've had my palate cleansed with Zhuzhi-Lang, and I'm very thankful. So thank you, Zhuzhi-Lang. Now I want to read more fan fiction with you. I'm starting to see why you guys like the fan fiction. I'm starting to see why you all are. I'm not usually like, I like fan fiction, don't get me wrong, but I usually don't read a lot of it for stories. Usually it's just like shippy stuff. But now I'm starting to see where y'all are coming from. So anyway, I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. Zhuzhi-Lang has my heart. I love him. And I'm sad that he's dead. I want more of him. And I kind of want to see a Xinxingqiu and Zhuzhi-Lang fan fiction. I'm not gonna lie. Just don't tell Lo Binghe. Anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week, y'all. It's going to be a doozy with chapters 93 and 94, I feel, of Scum Villain's self-saving system. Bye.